That the origin of why married couples become one woman take their husband's surname dates back to the 1600s, where coverture prohibited women from having any legal identity or rights. BC they were considered one with the husband and therefore subsumed his identity. There are people out there now who didn't know this was a thing. It's actually really awesome and refreshing to hear that this is shocking to a younger generation rather than just the way things were done. You're right, be righteously indignant. It was crazy pants down when the patriarchy. This is why feminism exists, and why it is important. Did you know up until the 1970s, banks could refuse to issue credit cards to unmarried women, and often required both single and married women to bring a man in to co-sign if one was issued? This may sound cold, but when my fiancé and I get married after 10 years together solely for insurance coverage, she will keep her maiden name while being 100% responsible for her half of our marriage. A marriage is two people talking and making decisions together as they build their futures. Sides are represented and both should have a stake in it. Hence, 100% responsible for her half, like I am for mine. I am not her master nor I her slave. I think the convention of married people becoming one, started much earlier than the 1600. It was written in the Bible. Matthew 19:4-6. Haven't you read, he replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So, they are no longer two, but one flesh. The one flesh refers to a child. Is it common in the US for the wife to take her husband's surname? Is it something that happens automatically or she needs to fill out papers? In my country Italy almost always the wife keeps her original surname after the wedding. The only exception is when the husband is someone extremely rich, but even in that case a woman cannot legally take her husband's surname. P.S. Why did I get a downvote? I just asked a question. No, coverture created the legal entity of marital property, where the man's and the woman's property became marital property. The title is a very misleading description of coverture. When feminists pushed for this to change, they had the woman's property stay hers, but the man's property remain marital property, to which she had access as a wife. This might be where what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine stems from. This is literally in the first few pages of the Bible. Also, for most of history, if you asked a man or a woman about their identity, they'd look at you like you were an idiot. Men and women were largely focused on survival, hard work, hard lives, and both doing their best to avoid the ire of whatever sociopathic ruler of the time. I just went to a wedding a couple days ago and it was a beautiful ceremony, but when the person presiding over the ceremony said, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Husband's full name," I cringed a little internally and got to wondering how that state of affairs would come about. This is pretty much what I figured. She takes your name. You take her name. Everybody keeps their own name. Anything but a hyphen. From the opinion of a server admin, hyphens are the devil. X200B. And apostrophes. Sorry Larry O'Connor, you are O'Connor or whatever. XYZ now. And don't even get me started with spaces. One interesting detail of this is, let's say Mary Jones marries John Smith. If she takes his name, she's not Mrs. Mary Smith, she's Mrs. John Smith. My mom used to write her married name this way and corrected me when I addressed a letter to her as Miss as her first name, our family name. Well, a woman has another man's surname from birth. In wedding, when her dad walks her down, it's to give her away, kind of like a handover, to her new husband, whose surname she then takes. I make this seem really weird, but I guess that's kind of what it comes down to. I thought it was just cause it was easier. Fuck, we can have people running around with more than one last name. Let's just make it so the kid gets one of the parents' name. Anybody got a coin? Okay, heads. Kids get the father's name. Done and done. This is why I like the Latin naming custom. Though man's last name is used, both parents' last name will be included in the child's name. Also, this custom is extended to grandparents' name. This is also why their full name is in St. Long. Do you mean wedding rings? Because monogamous marriage goes back to pre-Greco Egypt. Like 2000, it was actually between siblings to keep blood pure. Yes, incest was a thing in pre-Alexandrian Egypt and led to its downfall. Reading all of this angers me, not for the learning of the why, but more the discovery that women really have gotten the shit end of the stick since time immemorial. Just angering to learn more and more about it. Also, the reason the Christian Bible calls homosexuality a sin is because a man would have to lay with another man, something that a woman would do. So therefore the gay man would be a woman. And the word husband is from animal husbandry, you know, the branch of agriculture concerned with milk production and selective breeding. It's kinda natural to change names. My daughters, both 40ish, call me dad or daddy on the phone to me, but when we are around the family I'm granddad. Daddy is my son-in-law. Enter India, where you are just not allowed to marry someone with a different surname. For most people, since India is as diverse as a continent and there is no one rule, the tradition was to take his first name too. Ever hear Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Johnson? You still hear that nonsense in formal settings sometimes. It's bizarre. Actually, the two becoming one goes back even further, to Genesis in the Bible. My wife did not take my last name. The kids, of course, had my name, but changing all her shit to my last name would have been too much of a hassle. I tried to get my wife and I to both change our names to something new altogether. Although she was against us becoming Mr. and Mrs. Van Halen, I always figured it was too solid for a single family unit. Kind of like when companies merge, how they tend to do the same. I read it was because it was obvious who the mother of the children was but not the father always. Johnson, Wilson, etc. Even if you don't take your husband's name, the patriarchy still won. Your maiden name is your grandpa's last name. I was certain my wife would at least hyphen her name, but she took mine because she hated her dad so goddamn much. Coverture is an example of that idea taking root in a legal system, not the origin of why it exists culturally. Motherhood is the truth, fatherhood is a belief. Mess with this naming tradition at your peril. Western society. Actually, it is in Genesis in the Bible, so at least 5,000 years old. But what's a millennia or 6 among friends? The precedent was also reinforced further in 1996 when the Two Become One was released by the Spice Girls. The Bible mentions becoming one, and that's dated a long time before the 1600s. In Islam, it's not allowed for a woman to take her husband's last name. She keeps her family name. Thank goodness there are places where this is unheard of, and double surnames are the norm. This is why I didn't change my name when I got married. I think it's a bullshit tradition. Velp, I'm old school. If she doesn't take my name, she can take herself somewhere else. Should be the other way when unmarried couples have babies, kids get mom's last name. Love my husband's name, but I have my own. I was not interested in changing it. If you call my wife Mrs. my first and last name, you're gonna get a broken arm. We're one, but we're not the same. Well, we hurt each other, and we do it again. America is the only country I've been in where this is still the norm. Yeah, I might tell my wife that and ask a buddy if I could stay over. Subsumed identity. Women are John Carpenter's a thing confirmed. What a shitty outdated custom. Why would anyone do that today?